don't know. Tim Walz is out there talking again.
You say he could fight any Trump supporter?
Yeah, he says he kicked their and they're scared of him because he could fix a truck. They're threatened by his masculinity. I know how to fix a truck. That's what he said. I'm like, do you? I bet you don't.
The lady doth protest too much.
I bet you don't.
I fear.
I bet if I bring a broken truck to you and a bag of tools, you're
You were saying that men he worked with in the National Guard in Nebraska went to the FBI because they believed he had given classified military secrets to the Chinese government?
They suspect that he did.
Suspected to the point that they went to the FBI.
And then China started producing almost a carbon copy of this military tank a couple of years later.
Come on. For real?
According to all of our research.
Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson just took Minnesota Governor Tim Walz on a one-way trip to Rose City, and it wasn't pretty. Rogan tore into him with raw disbelief and sharp humor, while Tucker cut through his policies like a chef with a grudge. From pandemic mistakes to rising crime, they exposed Walz as a walking disaster wrapped in polite incompetence. If weak leadership ever needed a mascot, this takedown made sure it now has a name tag. Asterisk.
There's video of Tim Walz doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Exact same thing. And he said, of course, it's a Nazi salute. He said that.
Right.
We spent 3 days debating, having them trying to debate that President Musk gave a Nazi salute. Of course he did. But that is a distraction.
This is how crazy things have gotten.
It's coordinated propaganda.
Joe Rogan sat back in his chair, arms folded, that skeptical look spreading over his face like he'd just been told a vegan burger tastes exactly like a steak. The topic on the table was Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Rogan didn't even try to hold back. He jumped in like a human torpedo of logic and disbelief. This wasn't going to be a mild jab. It was going to be a full-strength rant on government failure, and Tim Walz just happened to be the chosen piñata.
So, who is Tim Walz exactly? Most of us, I just want to say I think he's should be investigated by the sex crimes unit. I really feel that way. I'm not asking you to comment on that, but he's one of the creepiest people I've ever seen. The vibe I get off that guy, I would not let him in my house. That's just my feeling. Maybe I'm being totally unfair.
First, he zeroed in on Walz's pandemic performance. Rogan chuckled, shaking his head like he was remembering a really bad sci-fi plot. He said Tim Walz treated Minnesota like it was a petri dish and tried to create the world's most confusing, restrictive, and nonsensical set of rules known to mankind. Businesses closed, schools stayed shut, yet big box stores thrived. Rogan mocked the logic behind shutting down small gyms while keeping liquor stores open, joking that Walz must have believed alcohol killed the virus better than exercise and sunlight.
That is? Yeah. You shoot a guy in the face and the dude's like, yeah, I look like a bird. Don't worry about it.
I look like a deer. Is there any way to you that we're not being gaslit by Kamala Harris?
In what way?
Wasn't she a joke even among Democrats?
And the mask mandates. Rogan rolled his eyes so hard it was like watching a guy trying to shake off the memory of bad cafeteria food. He painted a picture of Tim Walz flipping through a pandemic policy manual written by Twitter activists and bureaucrats who hadn't seen sunlight since Y2K. It wasn't science-based leadership. Rogan argued it was panic theater with Walz as the lead actor and every Minnesota citizen stuck as the confused understudy.
His wedding anniversary, they were married 5 years after Tiananmen Square, and he picked that date because it was a date that they would remember, he and his wife.
What?
Who does that?
Tiananmen Square?
Correct.
The tank crushing the lone protester? That's
their wedding anniversary. And they went to China for their honeymoon.
Come on. You're sure he picked the anniversary?
They've talked about this
in
interviews. Yeah, this is in newspapers.
But Tiananmen Square was a massacre of peaceful protesters.
I know.
Do you think they picked it to in the memory of those brave souls who died opposing the machine?
They haven't said that.
Oh my God!
And then the riots. Rogan wasn't even angry. He was baffled. The way Walz handled the George Floyd protests and, more importantly, the violent chaos that followed left him speechless for maybe half a second. He dove in with the fury of a man who just watched a firefighter pour gasoline on a fire. Rogan pointed out how Minneapolis looked like a post-apocalyptic movie set and how Walls' strategy was basically to look surprised and stay silent while entire city blocks burned.
Bother me that much. If the people in Minnesota like it, like, who cares? It's just a star and some colors. The real problem is when you hear discussions of things that are like openly Marxist philosophies, when you hear talk about equal outcomes and, and not just equal opportunity, but that we all need to arrive at the same place, equal outcome talk. There's only one way they can do that, and it's by forcing you.
Well, it's by everyone having nothing.
Yeah.
That's the only way to have things totally equal. Because
Exactly.
you can't have everyone have everything. That's impossible.
Right. There's no way. There's not enough resources.
He said it felt like Walls was trying to set a world record for the slowest response to civil unrest. Like he was waiting for the fire to send him an official meeting request. Rogan suggested that Tim Walz didn't really govern so much as he held press conferences and hoped the smoke would clear on its own. It wasn't leadership. It was like watching a substitute teacher try to control a classroom with a pamphlet and a prayer. Then Rogan moved to education policy, and that's when he really started to warm up. He torched Walz's relationship with the teachers' unions, joking that it was less a partnership and more of a hostage situation. Schools under Walz stayed shut so long that kids forgot what a pencil was. But teachers' union heads were treated like oracle priests whose demands were carved in sacred stone. Rogan laughed at the idea that in Minnesota, public education had turned into a political vending machine where every policy came with a slogan but no results. He then tore into crime, violent crime rates, carjackings, and police morale. Rogan covered it all, he said under Walz. Minneapolis turned into the kind of place where Uber drivers needed to offer combat pay and cops were treated like suspects in their own investigations. Rogan pictured Walz sitting in his office sipping coffee from a mug that read, "Please don't blame me," while neighborhoods spiraled into chaos and residents locked their doors before noon.
I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it.
First of all, kudos to CBS for allowing Governor Walz to quote Matthew 25:40 without interrupting him and saying, "I'm sorry, that's an attempt at bringing in foreign disinformation campaigns. We can't accept that."
May those words burn on your tongue.
Right.
That's what I...
And then, like a true stand-up with a mean streak, Rogan went after Walz's public image. He said the guy looked like he was always on the verge of apologizing for things he didn't even understand.
Ow.
His voice and his whole demeanor weren't confidence. They were the political version of a shrug, wrapped in a tie. Rogan joked that Walz looked like a middle manager forced to give a presentation on disaster preparedness while the building was already on fire. Then came Tucker Carlson. And if Rogan brought the sarcasm, Tucker brought the scalpel. He didn't yell and didn't even flinch. He just took apart Tim Walz with that icy smile that says, "You don't know it yet, but I'm about to dismantle your entire public persona." Tucker started with one word, weak. He said Tim Walz was the perfect example of what happens when ideology replaces reality. He wasn't governing Minnesota, he was managing feelings, afraid to offend, terrified of confrontation, and hooked on empty slogans. Tucker described Walz as a man who confused indecision for empathy and thought that hesitating long enough somehow made him virtuous.
If someone is going to inherit your soul, they don't want it bogged down with bad habits.
Right. Yeah, well, they don't want it to be evil. They want
Right.
it to have negative energy attached to it and the karma of killing a bunch of people. Like,
Right.
who wants Dick Cheney's soul? You know? The alien's like, you could have that, dude.
Remember when he shot someone and then the guy apologized
Yeah.
to him? Isn't that nuts?
You know how gangster that is?
Yeah.
You shoot a guy in the face and the dude's like, yeah, I look like a bird. Don't worry about it.
I
Yeah.
look like a deer. Is there any way to you that we're not being gaslit like to hell by Kamala Harris?
In what way?
Then he addressed Walz's reaction to the George Floyd incident, not from the angle of sympathy, but from the emptiness of real leadership. Tucker didn't criticize Walz for caring. He tore into him for disappearing when it mattered most. While people were scared, businesses burned, and the public begged for direction, Walz hid behind platitudes and rehearsed sorrow. Tucker said it was like watching a ship captain offer therapy instead of steering away from the iceberg. Then he talked about law and order, which for Tucker was the heart of the roast. Minnesota had become a test lab for soft on crime policies, and Walz was the head technician. Tucker painted a picture of a governor who let ideological activists dictate public safety while everyday people paid the price. Crime wasn't just statistics, Tucker argued. It was families, livelihoods, entire communities destroyed because their leaders were too cowardly to call evil by its name. He listed examples of failed reforms, mocked the idea of police being treated like a necessary evil instead of protectors, and skewered Walz's total surrender to the loudest, most radical voices in his party. Tucker called it moral abdication. With a press badge, Walz, he said, didn't protect people. He protected his own image, and Tucker didn't stop there. He took on the economy, saying Minnesota's tax policies under Walz were like a how-to manual for sending people to other states. He described the middle class packing up and leaving for lower taxes and higher sanity, while Walz held rallies about economic justice like he was auditioning for a documentary called How to Fail Upward. The exodus of businesses, the choking, regulations, the crumbling infrastructure. Tucker blamed it all on Walz's so-called forward-thinking vision.
I think it's fake. All of it.
Well, that Walz guy, I mean, I don't want to be too unfair because I don't know him and I don't have any hard evidence. He's a weirdo. That guy's weird.
He seems very
I'm
strange,
sorry.
yes.
There's something not right about that guy's personal life. So I hope I'm wrong because I don't want people like that with power. But most people I know with power in Washington have personal lives that would not withstand scrutiny.
Then came the cultural issues. Tucker tore into the absurdity of Walz's progressive stunts, mocking how the governor treated Minnesota like a testing ground for every new woke trend, turning schools into labs for confusion and government offices into activism centers. He said Walz wasn't interested in governing a diverse state, but was performing for an elite class of online spectators who confused chaos with courage. Tucker took special aim at Walz's pandemic response, calling it not just harsh, but deeply hypocritical. He pointed out how rules were bent, twisted, and applied however they fit the narrative. A peaceful protest was essential. A church service was dangerous. Local businesses had to shut down. But a Hollywood-backed rally got the red carpet. Tucker didn't just criticize, he shredded the whole mindset behind it. Even mocked the governor's tone, saying Walz delivered statements like he was reading bedtime stories to a nervous public. Tucker said it wasn't reassurance, it was infantilization. The people of Minnesota weren't looking for a life coach they needed, a leader who could walk through fire, not hold a feelings circle next to it. Then he brought it home with a brutal punch, claiming Tim Walz was a man built for failure in a time that demanded strength. A man who had mastered the art of sounding thoughtful while doing nothing. Someone who spent more time consulting with consultants than confronting reality. Minnesota didn't need a therapist, Tucker said. It needed a fighter.
Tasked with choosing the new flag and seal made its final selections this week, and the new design will debut next year. It follows 4 months of meetings, many spirited debates, and 2,500 submissions from the public sharing their ideas for the new symbols.
This is why they changed it, he said it was problematic.
Problematic. Oh, I love that term. Our current flag is problematic. I think we all know that. We've evolved into a more diverse state, and I think it's more reflective of that.
By the time both Rogan and Carlson were done, Tim Walz wasn't just roasted. He was incinerated.
Oh.
One shredded his logic with raw, unfiltered mockery, while the other sliced through his reputation with surgical precision. Yet both reached the same verdict. Tim Walz wasn't leading a state. He was managing its decline. And the worst part was, he didn't even seem to realize it. Joe Rogan jumped right back in with a wave of disbelief, like a man watching a magician saw a woman in half and then realizing the trick was, she actually vanished. He doubled down on Walz's uncanny ability to dodge accountability like it was a competitive sport. Rogan said Tim Walz could watch a city crumble in real time and still find a way to blame it on weather patterns, poor communication, or some vague societal failure that magically excused him from any responsibility. He compared Walz's leadership to watching a GPS keep recalculating while you're sinking in quicksand. One moment he's declaring safety a priority. The next he's watching another police department implode while hosting diversity workshops. In the rubble, Rogan painted a picture of Walz surrounded by policy advisors who looked like they'd never been outside long enough to touch grass. let alone understand the fallout of their own ideas. Then he went for the jugular on Walz's bizarre press conference tactics, laughing at how Walz always looked like he was about to apologize for anything, but somehow never actually took the blame. He called it a masterclass in meaningless sincerity, where every speech was just a word salad tossed with fear, indecision, and a sprinkle of smugness.
But also, interestingly enough, he has a confession letter. This is what I would call it. It's a letter made out to the FBI to Kash Patel that says that Governor Tim Walz made him do this.
Tucker, always ready with a velvet-gloved sledgehammer, shifted the spotlight to Walz's obsession with consensus. He argued that Walz had turned governance into a group project where everyone got a participation ribbon and no one dared to mention reality. Minnesota wasn't suffering from bad luck. It was suffering from cowardice disguised as diplomacy. Carlson pointed out how Walz never led from the front. He waited to see what the loudest faction wanted, then stepped forward with a nervous smile and a scripted message. Tucker compared it to someone joining a parade halfway through, grabbing a megaphone and pretending they'd organized the whole thing. It wasn't leadership. It was opportunism dressed in khakis and awkward humility. And neither of them was finished.
I think that, but I can't get past the core fact about Walz, which is he presided over, allowed the biggest city in the state to get burned down.
And seemed to not only allow it, but kind of
he liked it.
Support it, you know?
Well, yeah, did you see the video of his wife saying, I kept the windows open so I could smell the burning rubber from the riots?
I did not see that.
Wow. The wife whose hand he shook?
Not even close. Rogan circled back to Walz's climate policies, calling them more performative than productive. He mocked how Walz treated electric buses and solar panels like magic wands that would somehow fix potholes and violent crime in one sweep. Rogan laughed at the image of Walz standing next to a wind turbine, pretending it could power common sense. Meanwhile, Tucker zeroed in on the state's rising taxes, saying Walz squeezed the middle class dry while handing out ideological participation trophies. He argued that under Walz, hard work was punished and virtue signaling was rewarded. Both men agreed that Minnesota had become a case study in how not to govern. Rogan brought the rolling disbelief, and Tucker brought the surgical precision. They framed Walz not just as ineffective, but as a symbol of leadership that looked good on paper and fell apart the moment reality knocked on the door. That door wasn't just knocking, it was off the hinges. Asterisk,